In the summer of 1845, a British naval expedition sailed into the Arctic with enough supplies to last 3 years. They had 2 state-of-the-art ships, 129 of the most experienced sailors and officers in the Royal Navy, the most advanced navigation technology of the era. None of them ever came back. For over 170 years, the fate of the Franklin expedition remained one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in exploration history. And when scientists finally uncovered the truth, piece by piece, body by body, from beneath the Arctic ice, what they found was far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Welcome to Frontier History Archive, where we explore frontier history and the real stories of survival, exploration, and life at the edge of civilization. In 1845, the Northwest Passage was the holy grail of exploration. For centuries, European powers had been searching for a navigable sea route through the Arctic, a path connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific through the frozen waters above North America. The country that found it would control one of the most valuable trade routes on Earth. Britain had been trying for decades. Expedition after expedition had pushed into the Arctic and returned with partial maps, frostbitten crews, and the same answer: not yet. By 1845, the technology had finally caught up with the ambition. Steam-powered engines, reinforced iron hulls, food preserved in the newly invented tin cans. The British Admiralty was confident this time would be different. They selected Sir John Franklin to lead the mission. He was 59 years old, experienced, and well-connected. His ships HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were the strongest polar vessels ever built. They carried enough coal, food, and supplies to last 3 years in the ice, if necessary. On May 19, 1845, the expedition departed from the Thames. Crew members waved from the decks. Crowds gathered on the shore to watch them go. They were last seen by a whaling crew in late July 1845, anchored near Baffin Bay, waiting for the ice to clear. Then nothing. For 2 years, nobody worried. Arctic expeditions moved slowly. Communication was impossible once a ship entered the ice. The Admiralty had planned for a 3-year mission, and Franklin had orders not to turn back early unless absolutely necessary. But by 1847, with no word and no returning ships, anxiety began to build in London. Franklin's wife, Lady Jane Franklin, began pressing the Admiralty for answers. By 1848, the Admiralty launched the first search expedition, then another, and another. Over the next decade, more than 30 separate search missions pushed into the Arctic looking for Franklin and his men. Some of them nearly met the same fate. The Arctic is not a place that gives up its secrets easily. It is a vast, featureless landscape of shifting ice, brutal cold, and darkness. The first real clue came in 1850, when searchers found the expedition's first winter camp on Beechey Island. 3 graves. The camp was eerily neat, organized, careful, the signs of a disciplined crew not yet in crisis, but no written records. Then in 1859, an Irish explorer named Francis McGlintock found something on King William Island that changed everything. A single document. Left in a cairn of stones by the surviving crew members, it contained 2 messages written at different times. The first, dated May 1847, was routine. The ships were beset in ice near King William Island. Franklin was in command. All was well. The second message was written in the margins of the same document 11 months later, May 1848. Franklin was dead. 24 other officers and crew were also dead. The ships had been trapped in the ice for 18 months. The 105 survivors were abandoning the vessels and attempting to walk south to safety. 105 men, walking across the Arctic. In 1848, not one of them made it. Try to picture it. 105 men, weakened by nearly 2 years trapped in Arctic ice, hauling heavy wooden lifeboats on sledges across frozen terrain. Wind chill dropping to temperatures that freeze exposed skin in minutes. No landmarks, no trail, no certainty about what lay ahead. They were heading for the Back River, roughly 800 miles across hostile terrain. Inuit testimony painted a picture of the march in fragments brief, haunting glimpses of what those final weeks looked like. Groups of men stumbling across the ice. Some dragging the boats, some unable to walk, bodies left where they fell. One Inuit account described finding a large tent with 30 or 40 dead men inside, frozen where they lay, still in their uniforms. What killed them was not simply the cold, something else was happening, something researchers wouldn't understand for another century. In the 1980s, Owen Beatty began a systematic study. His team exhumed the bodies from Beechey Island, preserved by the permafrost. One of them, John Torrington, was so well preserved that his facial features were still intact. He looked like he was sleeping. The autopsies revealed extraordinarily high levels of lead in the tissue and bone. Levels so high, they would have caused serious neurological damage. Confusion, paranoia, impaired decision-making, weakness. The source of the lead took some time to identify. It was the tin cans. The food had been sealed using lead solder, applied hastily by a supplier, and made direct contact with the food. For months, possibly years, the crew had been slowly poisoning themselves with every meal. The implications were staggering. Franklin's poor decision-making, the failure to turn back, the choice to attempt an 800-mile march, they weren't just unlucky, they were sick. And they didn't know it. For over 160 years, the ships themselves remained lost. their exact locations unknown in the shifting Arctic waters. Whatever the ships left behind on the ocean floor had been slowly buried and scattered. Then, in 2014, 169 years after the expedition departed, a Canadian search team found HMS Erebus, sitting upright on the seafloor, remarkably intact. 2 years later, in 2016, they found HMS Terror. What the underwater surveys revealed added another layer to the mystery. Terror in particular was an extraordinary condition. Hatches closed, cabinets sealed, equipment stowed properly. It didn't look like a ship that had been abandoned in chaos. It looked like a ship that had been carefully put to bed. This suggested something the historical record hadn't accounted for. After the main group abandoned the ships, it appeared that some crew members may have returned to Terror, reboarded her, perhaps attempted to sail her further south before she finally sank. Who those men were, how long they survived aboard, what happened to them in the end, the Arctic has not told us yet. Artifacts recovered from the wrecks have filled museums, personal items, navigational equipment, each one a piece of 129 lives. Here is the part of the Franklin story that took the longest to acknowledge. While the British Admiralty was sending expedition after expedition, the Inuit people who lived in that region already knew what had happened. Inuit communities across the central Arctic had encountered the Franklin survivors during the final march. They had seen it. They carried detailed oral accounts passed down through generations, with the careful precision that defines oral history. When the explorer John Rae returned to London in 1854 with Inuit testimony, the British public reacted with hostility, because the Inuit accounts included something the Victorian public didn't want to hear. The survivors had resorted to cannibalism. Charles Dickens himself wrote articles dismissing the Inuit testimony as unreliable, suggesting the Franklin men had been killed by the Inuit. Lady Jane Franklin hired her own explorer, McClintock, to find evidence that contradicted Rae's findings. McClintock found the note in the cairn instead, and the bones on King William Island, and the evidence of the final march. The forensic analysis conducted in the 1990s confirmed what the Inuit had said 140 years earlier: cut marks on the bones. The Franklin disaster was not primarily a story about bad luck, it was a story about institutional pride colliding with reality. The Admiralty did not entertain the possibility that its ships, its technology, and its officers could be defeated by ice. Franklin's orders contained almost no contingency planning. The assumption built into the entire mission was that success was inevitable. The Arctic disagreed. The Inuit had been navigating that environment for thousands of years. They traveled light, they moved with the conditions. The Franklin expedition arrived with iron ships, canned food, and a regimental silver dining service. They ate off fine china while trapped. It is impossible to read the story without feeling the tragedy of men doing everything they had been trained to do while the situation demanded more. The search for Franklin answers is still ongoing. Underwater archaeology teams have been working the wrecks for years. Climate change has made the wrecks both more accessible and more vulnerable. The ice that preserved them for 170 years is retreating. The passage that Franklin died trying to find is now navigable for part of the year. It is one of history's more bitter ironies. Their names are on a monument in London. Their ships are on the floor of the Arctic Ocean. The ice kept its secrets for a long time. It is slowly giving them back.